What's going on, guys? Coming up on today's show, we're going to look at ESPN's 53-man roster projection for the Browns, and then I want to look at the surprise cuts, right? Who did Jake Trotter at ESPN Cleveland exclude from his final roster projection? So we'll run through those names and just break down his entire roster projection for the Browns. So let's get started with this coming in for the quarterback position. Trotter has 3 quarterbacks making the 53-man roster: Deshaun Watson, Josh Dobbs, and Dorian Thompson-Robinson. No real qualms or issues with this for me here. This seems pretty self-explanatory. Dobbs and Watson check out, and then DTR, 5th-round pick. You don't cut 5th-round picks unless they are a huge headache for you, and that's not been the case so far for the former UCLA Bruin. The odd man out is Kellen Mond. I also quickly want to plug that one of our new guys at Chat Sports made all these little player bios, as we like to call them. The titles are pretty funny as we get through the rest of the video. So just like a little Where's Waldo going on there. But yeah, I don't think Kellen Mond will make this roster. He might be the practice squad quarterback, but the Browns aren't taking 4 quarterbacks. So Mond, unfortunately, at this point is just battling with all other backup quarterbacks in the NFL, so that when he inevitably does get cut, unless an injury happens, another team might sign him off the waiver wire, like Cleveland, because they think he's better than their current backup, or if their starter gets injured, or something like that. Moving on to the running backs now. Nick Chubb, Jerome Ford, yep. And then Demetric Felton. Okay, so now we get a first little, opinion, if you will, because up to this point it was pretty factual. But Demetric Felton makes this roster over John Kelly, a guy who's been on this practice squad for the past few seasons. Former Tennessee Vol, went to the LA Rams. Yeah, still LA at the time, or was LA at the time. But Demetric Felton, I could see making this roster because he does bring something to this running back room that Chubb and Ford don't have a ton of experience in, or maybe excel at, and that would be a receiving threat. I do think Nick Chubb has been somewhat dragged through the mud as a receiving running back when he's got pretty good hands. He just doesn't maybe stand out at it like other players do. But Demetric Felton, I could see making this roster to bring that type of pass-catching durability and versatility to this offense. Now, I want to know from everyone watching right now if I should do my own Browns roster projection. We'll put it at 200 likes, and if we reach that number, I will do that on a future show. So I just want to gauge everyone's interest right now. If you'd like to see my own 53-man roster projection, like today's video, and at 200, we'll get it done. Moving on to the wide receiver room, we've got Amari Cooper, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Elijah Moore, Cedric Tillman, Marquise Goodwin, David Bell, and Jakeem Grant. I just want to give Jake Trotter a quick pat in the back for including David Bell, because there is just way too much chatter about the Browns moving on from the former 3rd-round pick after just one season, when it's not because of anything off the field like a certain someone. But the notable name-ish, you could say, not on that list, is Anthony Schwartz. And Schwartz knows that he's got an uphill battle, and it's a bummer for him. But coming into training camp on the PUP list with a hamstring injury, you just can't do it. Like, I know injuries suck and they are out of your control, but if you watch enough Hard Knocks and behind-the-scenes tape of NFL, lives and whatnot, there is a lot of pressure on these players to push and play through injuries. So Schwartz, someone that's already on the chopping block, out with a hammy, when he needs to have as many good reps as possible, he is not on the inside, looking out right now. He needs to reverse the script at the moment, and he's not going to do that standing on the sideline. It's a bummer for him, but unfortunately, I don't see 10 making the roster either. Some other quick injury news I just want to hit on. We'll do a better roundup on all the training camp news probably on tomorrow's show, so stick around for that. But when it comes to wide receivers, Mary Kay tweeted out that Amari Cooper off to the side in conditioning area today after leaving yesterday's practice early with a minor tweak of something. Kevin Stefanski or Andrew Berry, one of the two, confirmed it was not that core muscle surgery he got the end of last season, but they're not concerned about it. They're calling it day-to-day. There's nothing to sound the alarm over here. Other kick return news here, and another name that was not on the 53-man roster projection, Jalen Darden, someone that Jake Trotter left off his list. First in the kick return line today, Demetric Felton was second. I'm going to say this right now, wide receiver 7, whether that's Jakeem Grant or Jalen Darden, because that appears to be the battle here, should go to the best returner. Because let's be honest, we spend so much time in late July and August just battling with one another on Twitter or on X, I guess, or anywhere else. And it's always over these meaningless debates of who's a better wide receiver, David Bell or Jalen Darden. Newsflash, neither player is seeing the field once we get to September. It's going to be DPJ, Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, Cedric Tillman. So if we're not talking about guys that are going to be impactful players on offense or defense, well, then let's look for the best special teamers. And if that's Jalen Darden or if that's Jakeem Grant, we'll find out over the next 5 or 6 weeks. But I lean more towards who can bring better special teams value if they're already at the bottom of their offensive or defensive depth chart. Now, with the Browns training camp underway at the Greenbrier Resort in West Virginia, it did get me wondering, what is an underrated state in your eyes to go out and visit? I went to college in the Volunteer State, Tennessee. I've always said it's a very underrated state, one of the best states in the union. But underrated states, I love the city of Charleston. So I think South Carolina, if you've never been, would be a fun little, spring break getaway. But let me know where your underrated state is down in the comment section. On to the tight end room here, starting with David Njoku. Yep, Harrison Bryant and Jordan Akins. Akins and Njoku are essentially locks to make this roster. But Harrison Bryant, I don't think is as cemented as the other two guys just because he does have a decent cap hit. The Browns did recently restructure his deal. I think unless he's traded, he's making this 53-man roster. Now for the offensive line, you've got your starters all making it, of course, Wills, Bitonio, Pocic, Teller, and Conklin. James Hudson continues to be a very reliable swing tackle in my eyes. Drew Forbes, Dawand Jones, who has been dealing with an illness and has not been active during training camp thus far. Him and the fellow Ohio State Buckeye, Luke Wypler, both making this roster. So the only odd man out, if you will, is Nick Harris, the former 5th-round pick, I think it was, out of Washington. Unfortunately, his season was cut short last year, 2 to 3 snaps into the Jags preseason game. So this would be a pretty notable-ish cut for Cleveland to move on from what was supposed to be their starting center last year to fast forward 12 months later, and he's not even on the roster. I'm not quite sure what the future holds for Nick Harris, where he's at recovery-wise. He's not on the PUP list, so that's a good sign that he's back to 100% or, at least a playable percentage. But this will be an interesting spot to see because I'm sure the Browns would like to keep Harris, but do they want to go with 10 offensive linemen or 9 offensive linemen? Because it might not seem like a big difference right now or big deal right now. But once you start getting towards the 50th and 51st and 52nd guys on the roster, it can be tough to squeeze everyone you want on there. Before we get to the defensive side of the football, I just want to give some quick shout-outs to recent subscribers we picked up here at the channel. So Jake Schaefer, shout out to you. John Whipple, Doc Smitty 4, Robert Barnfather. What an all-time last name right there. Robert Barnfather. And then Just Figure. So thank you to everyone who has subscribed now, the last week, or in the last 12 months, or whenever you subbed. And if you have not subscribed, we are a channel that gives back to the audience. It's a two-way street here at Chat Sports. So if you want to get a shout-out, if you want to get on screen, make sure you subscribe. On the defensive line, Myles Garrett, Za'Darius Smith, Ogbo Okoronkwo, Alex Wright, Isaiah McGuire, all defensive ends making the roster. Makes sense to me. Dalvin Tomlinson, Jordan Elliott, Siaki Ika. And then now with the moving on from Perion Winfrey, Maurice Hurst is that 4th defensive tackle battling with Tommy Togiai and Tristan Hill. One name that is a little bit, surprising-ish to not see on there. Surprise is a strong word. But Isaiah Thomas, remember, he was a 7th-round pick last year out of Oklahoma. And as the new guy at Chat Sports called him, one-sack wonder. You just didn't know anything about Isaiah Thomas. I thought it was a pretty funny title. I wanted to keep it in there. But he was great in the preseason. Remember that? It's just preseason, and it does go to show where we make such big deal out of preseason games, and then the regular season comes, and it's like, oh, yeah, we're never going to see those guys again because Myles Garrett's going to play now. But Isaiah Thomas is kind of a notable name for someone that had a sack last year as a 7th-round pick to not make this year's 53-man roster. I'm going to put it this way. If Isaiah Thomas was a 3rd-round pick last year and Alex Wright was the 7th-round pick last year, Which one of those two guys makes this year 53-man roster? I'm going to think Isaiah Thomas. Now, there are no signs of a defensive tackle signing at this point, and we may very well get all the way until September without the Browns adding a defensive tackle. I am sure they've done all their homework on the current free agents, and if none of them are up to par for them, the only chance I really see of them adding a defensive tackle is once we get to that 53-man roster cutdown day, and the Browns survey all the defensive tackles that were cut across the league, and they go, this guy, and this guy is better than our fourth defensive tackle. Let's go out and make a move right now. I also just want to give a second to talk about how elite this edge rusher duo is going to be this year. I know these two guys are locks to make the roster, but if you look at their last 3 years, and for Za'Darius Smith, I kind of fudged the numbers because there's that one season he played like one quarter until he got hurt. But you're talking about two guys combining with 44 and 36 sacks over the last 3 seasons. 159 pressures for Garrett, 126 for Za'Darius Smith. This is going to be a top duo in the NFL in terms of edge rushers. And someone tossed this question on a recent mailbag we did or during our live show. Tune in every Thursday, 5 o'clock Eastern, self-plug. But do you guys think Myles Garrett and Za'Darius Smith could combine for 30 sacks? Let's say Garrett does better than what he did last year, where he had 16 sacks. Let's say he gets to 18 sacks. Can Za'Darius Smith get 12 sacks? That would not be a career high for him, so he's done that before. Like, he's got that capability. 30 is a big number for two players to combine for, but if there is a duo to do it this year, I think these two would be towards the top of the list with Highsmith, Hayward, and Watt, someone in Sanford like Hargrave and Bosa over in the Bay Area. But let me know if you guys think Garrett and Za'Darius Smith can combine for 30 sacks. We're on to the linebacker room. This is a spot I'm very interested in because Jake Trotter had Anthony Walker, J.O.K., Taki, Jacob Phillips, Tony Fields, and Matthew Adams all making the roster. Some injury updates I just want to relay with you guys before I start breaking that down. Anthony Walker has been a full go essentially so far at training camp. Not on the PUP list. Doesn't really appear to be working out on the side. Might not be 100%, but still great to see this early in the summer. And Taki, someone that tore his ACL in December of last year, is not on the PUP list. He is ready to go. Very fantastic news, very promising news, really exciting stuff. And right before we started filming, JOK said he did not get off-season foot surgery. He had the option to, but it was basically a Liz Frank fracture. And my rule of thumb when it comes to surgeries is if the surgery is named after someone or something like that, it's not good, right? Tommy John, Liz Frank, it just sounds scarier when it's got someone's name associated to it. But a notable name-ish, you could say, that was not included on this 53-man roster, and producer Rolly's laughing, the one-and-done candidate, Jordan Kunaszyk. I don't think this is accurate. I do think Jordan Kunaszyk makes this 53-man roster. Jim Schwartz was a big fan of his back in OTAs and minicamp. I mean, he wore his jersey the first day of mandatory minicamp, so that's got to count for something. I thought Kunaszyk played very well last year on special teams, and then down the stretch when you were down your 4 top linebackers. So my guess is they might hold on to him for a little bit extra insurance, but Trotter had Matthew Adams making it over Kunaszyk, and like I said earlier, when you're the last guy in the depth chart, you have to bring special teams value. So between Adams and Kunaszyk, who's a better special teamer? We will find that out. Now, before we get on to the rest of today's video, there is an awesome deal right now over on Fanatics. Now, I'm pissed at myself because I forgot to put on my own Nick Chubb jersey with it just 2 doors down. But regardless, you can get their throwback jerseys for Nick Chubb 25% off. Now, these deals, I know Fanatics can sometimes go for a while, but when it comes to jersey deals, they don't last for very long. So if you're thinking, or just a tiny percent of you is thinking, I kind of want to get a new Browns jersey, get it right now, because if you wait 24, 48 hours and decide, screw it, I want to get one, well, now you're paying $130. Right now, you can get it less than $100, 25% off by going to chatsports.com/Chubb jersey. That link's in the comments and the description of today's video. Moving on to the secondary, Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome, Martin Emerson, A.J. Green, Cameron Mitchell, and Mike Ford all make this roster in Trotter's eyes. I agree with essentially all that. The only little pushback I'd have is no Thomas Graham. I'm a big fan of Thomas Graham. He was a draft pick he's on the chopping block. He was a Chicago Bears draft pick that I just remember on Monday Night Football when the Bears' entire secondary had COVID. Thomas Graham, a guy from the practice squad, got called up. No one had ever heard of him before. And he more or less locked down Justin Jefferson. So because of that one game, I have bought in on Thomas Graham for the rest of his NFL career. So I'd like to see him make this roster. And I think he could do a good job in that slot position if Newsome's no longer going to occupy it. All right, let's fast forward through the rest of this roster projection. Delpit, Thornhill, McLeod, and DeAnthony Bell. Yeah, no real surprises here. Maybe Ronnie Hickman could take that spot from DeAnthony Bell, but I think these 4 guys are pretty far ahead of the rest of the safeties. Special teams, Cade York, Corey Bojorquez, and Charlie Hewlett all making the roster. No surprise there. I don't see any change happening unless there is an injury. So, with that being said, where did Jake Trotter go wrong? He does a great job of covering the team. Does a good job. Got some controversy going right there. But let me know where you think he went wrong, right? Was it someone that he excluded, someone he included on his list that you don't agree with? Let me know in the comment section below where you think Trotter went wrong. Now, producer Rolly is ecstatic to be in the studio today because he is itching to get this card right.
I'm finally back. I haven't been on Browns Report in a while. I'm going to get the guess right. And you know what? You know how they have beards grow out during postseason time? Well, I told PD this weekend I was going full clean shaven
for the
first time in 5 years to turn around the juju so I can pick the card correctly. So beard's gone. I'm ready to get a pick.
You look like Rufus from Kim Possible, the Naked Mole Rat.
Wow.
Some quick analytics, though. Clubs are hitting 33% of the time. Hearts are hitting 15% of the time.
Hard-hitting analysis.
Yep. Okay. Which card do you want to go with?
And with that being said, I'm going to ride the wave. I'm going to go with the numbers and go with the 10 of clubs.
Okay. I think that was the last card, actually.
Oh, really?
I don't know. I don't remember. But we had it recently, I feel like. I will go with the Ace of Diamonds.
That's a bad pick.
One more
it's a bad pick.
For good measure. The least picked card.
Oh.
Jack of Spades. This is only the 3rd time a Jack has been drawn. So, unfortunately for Rolly and myself, the score remains gridlocked at 1 apiece between myself and the producers. But that will do it for us on today's show. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you guys later.